And I'm going to actually record this right now because, of course, this will probably become an audio interview too. But so tell me what tell me what you're up to, because right now we just had the strike. Okay. The WGA strike, is it over?
Oh, it is. Thank you. I mean, what a long, almost 5 months. I think we all sort of knew going into the vote, back in May, that we were going to strike because we needed to, because the industry needed, just huge change that we weren't going to get. And, but 5 months, it's almost a record, for the WGA. It's tough. I don't think a lot of people realize it wasn't just 5 months. I usually pitch, especially if it's my holiday movies, I'm pitching late in the year, early in the year to get them for the next year. And nobody was taking pitches because everybody assumed we were going on strike. So it really shut down months before. And even now, it's not like I have a day job. I'm not a TV show. I'm on a TV show, which would be amazing, but I don't just go back into a show. I'm pitching features, and so it's like, and they're Christmas and non-Christmas. So I literally, before we did this, I was emailing a producer, and I know we're all doing it. Hi, checking in. Haven't been able to speak to you for 5 months because we were on strike and on other opposite ends of, the negotiations, but hi, I'm back and let's work together again. So it's just hard. I think at the end of the day, the producers I work with, we all want to create great content. And, and we all want everybody to have a fair deal so we can keep doing what we're doing. But man, it was a long 5 months, Margaret.
Yeah. So, I mean, tough. How did you deal with that 5 months without working?
Yeah, it was hard. And like I said, it was actually almost more than a year of not, having a paycheck of any kind, in the industry. And I'm one of the writers that lost their health insurance. And so I went on Cobra, but then you only have that, for so long. Yeah, exactly. And I think for a lot of us, we were coming out of the pandemic, like everybody, no matter what job you have out there, it was tough during the pandemic. And so, especially I had a movie, a Hallmark movie that was being set up, but then the pandemic happened, everything shifted, everything changed. And so as a feature writer, meaning I'm the one that writes those TV Christmas movies or those TV rom-coms or streaming Netflix, Hulu, the short form 2 hours. I'm not in a room writing your favorite TV series. We're freelancers. We're pitching all the time. We're hustling. We're trying to get a deal. And, you can go a year or two without selling something in a good time, but you add a strike and all that angst and anxiety that we all had. It wasn't just the writers, the studios, I think the ones really caught in the middle were a lot of the producers, the producers that, it's not just the studios, these guys, they can't work without us. And I'm also a member of SAG-AFTRA. And as of this recording, SAG-AFTRA is still on strike. And, as much as I'm a writer and I'm happy that I can go back to work and reach out to a producer today, we have nothing without our actors. So we need them to get a fair deal immediately too. And that's why this year I always say I use adversity as fuel. And we've talked before, I went from being a war correspondent in Afghanistan and in Bosnia. I was a crime and investigative reporter, and I did a 180 and started to do my travel therapy show, doing inspiring, uplifting content, which led me into writing my first Christmas movie, which is how I went down the entertainment business rabbit hole. But, every time there's something that happens, I just try to find something positive and just one step in front of the other. I said adversity is my fuel. So I've been going full speed ahead on fumes lately, but trying to make things work.
Okay, what do you mean by adversity is your fuel? I can tell that you came from journalism because you usually try to find that one phrase that hits.
Yeah, I think that's the way it is as a reporter. You keep it in your mind. It's that positivity. When things are at their worst, you can either kind of crumble and just curl up in a little ball and hey, I'm not saying that I haven't been there, but at the end of the day, I allow myself to, have a moment, but then I pick it up. It's almost like it's that fight or flight type of thing. Like I'm always in the fight, because as an investigative reporter and a war correspondent, you are hustling all the time and you're in often dangerous situations. And so you're living on that adrenaline. So when things go really sideways for me, instead of getting quiet and just, kind of shrinking, I grow. That's my go time. That's when I am able to think probably the clearest. I have a really good friend in the business, and, she told me once, all hell had broken loose on something in my life. I don't even remember. It just shows you the things that we think are so impactful at the time, and you look years back. But I remember I was telling her and really wanted this empathy and sympathy. And she kind of looked gleeful. And I was kind of like looking, and she goes, I'm excited. I'm like, excited. This is like the worst thing that's happened to me. This is terrible. She's like, no, I'm excited to see what you do next. You do
Wow.
best when you're down and out. So, there's been a lot of things beyond the strike that just keep knocking you down. So I just try to take every negative and just use it to go forward and to propel forward. And that works for me. And being grateful. I know it sounds a little corny, but every day I say 3 things I'm grateful for. And we are very blessed living in this country right now, especially of what we have. And while there's a lot of problems out there, I think just coming from a place of gratitude, that really puts perspective on it.
Yeah, but then some people might think that that whole attitude without really looking at it is like toxic positivity. So how do you avoid that?
Yeah,
I don't
even know what that means unless it's fake.
Toxic. Well, toxic positivity means you're being very positive and you're not working through the feelings. You're like, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine.
I hear you. I hear you. I thought you meant like, how the people, on social media, everything's perfect in their world.
Well,
they only post the positive. And so it's very unhealthy, especially for our children, thinking that, gosh, there is no trauma. Something must be wrong with me because I have angst, or, these jeans don't fit, or I have a pimple, and they think, the world is over, because social media certainly doesn't show that, or not as much as you'd think. I think that when you talk about the positivity, you definitely have to feel the feels, you have to go through it, but everybody deals with it in a different way. You have people that completely stop down too, right? And you're paralyzed and you can't move forward. And that's valid too. But I think for me, it's not, I also have my other life, as I call it, is travel therapy, and my website, traveltherapytrips.com. And it's picking trips based on what you're going through in life. And one of my slogans was take 2 trips and call me in the morning. And I say, okay, you're going through a breakup, go here. You're stressed out, go here, but pick the trip and be intentional. And I had somebody ask me that once, well, are you just running from your problems by going to a travel location? And I don't see it that way. I'm like, no, you're changing your attitude by changing your environment. You might be stuck in a certain way in your environment. And we all know traveling in different cultures, different people can get our minds sparking in a different way. I just don't think we should be stuck. It's very valid to be like, I'm here telling you it's been tough. I'm not being like, oh, it's great. Now, this was wonderful. And it's like, it's a hustle. I'm shopping around for health insurance, and at my age and as hard as I've worked, that shouldn't be something that I should be worried about, but it is, and it's real. But I think it just depends on your background. I came from a place growing up, I didn't have the easiest childhood. So I think if I'd owned being paralyzed with fear or letting things knock me down, I wouldn't be who I am today. And so I had to find a way to take the negative and make it useful to me, find a way to move forward. And one of the things that I do the most, that I love the most, is I try to give back. And this sounds so damn corny. I know it does, but it's so true that you feel so much better. So I'll be stuck in something in my life, let's just say the strike, for example. So I went on TikTok. Say what you will about social media, but it was great because I had a book coming out and I wanted to learn and see. I'm like, wow, this is interesting. But I started getting questions. So I do this walk and talk where I just answer questions about writing movies, writing books, how to get agents, all the stuff that people want to know. No one ever told me. I had to find out on my own. So that makes me feel so good, Margaret, when I have a really crappy day and I'll go and answer questions and do an interview or something and giving back. Then I feel better. Then I feel like, okay, I might be in a rough time, but maybe I have something. It's like the old days of Neighbors, it's like, okay, I don't have a snow plow, but you have a horse. How about we all switch resources? That's how I feel like we're all kind of surviving, ever since COVID. I feel very much that way because we've been so isolated. We've all had to find unique ways to go forward, for sure.
Yeah, because I feel like you and I became friends and we've never met offline yet. So maybe we will sometime, if you ever get out of the Southwest.
I know.
If I ever get out of here.
Absolutely. Well, I love Chicago. My last travel therapy TV segment that I did, and they aired during in New York, on all the top network shows, was in Chicago. And it was 2019. So it was right before COVID. And it was the year of theater. So I got to go to Chicago and do some amazing things with theater and really focus on it. Because I've been to Chicago before for travel. And of course, I cover food because I'm a foodie and you guys have the best food ever. But you also have some amazing theater that people don't always think about. And there were some really cool stories that I did. That was the last one because I think it was December of 2019. So, then everything shut down with COVID, of course, a few months later. But I love Chicago. I mean, I always have. I will say I have lived in as a TV reporter, I've lived in Montana, Idaho, Minnesota, South Dakota, Utah, cold places. but you all have really cold too. I mean, Minnesota was pretty rough, so I'm not a total cupcake when it comes to dealing with the cold.
Right.
But I will say I like the warmer weather if I can get away with it.
I like LA food because I noticed that, because I noticed that regular food in LA, it tastes really fresh, and comparable food here is not as good. But yeah, it's got a good selection here though. But
absolutely.
Okay, so when the writer's strike started though, how long did you think that the WGA was going to be on strike?
I felt like it was going to be a while. As a matter of fact, we were I was taking an entertainment business school because while I did 4 movies so fast, I feel like I missed a lot of steps. I didn't go to film school. I'm not saying you have to. I'm a perfect example of someone who didn't, but I believe knowledge is power. And I felt like sometimes in the room, like, I don't know how to do certain deals. Even if I'm never going to do them, I wanted to learn. So it was called Entertainment Business School at EBS. And it was it's small. There's only like 30 people and she does only 2 a year. And she's great. She used to work for Gary Shandling. She's a development exec. And she's just, she's kind of like our WGA when we have these great WGA, classes and everything. It felt like that, had that sense of community. And I remember there was right before the strike, there was an entertainment attorney on, and we were getting tips and everything from him. And he said, "Do you really think we're going to strike?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he's like, "And you think, how long will it be?" And I'm like, "A while." And you got to think about not that I'm the aficionado here on the strike, but in the most basic sense, and one of the great places to listen, if anyone is interested in hearing a little more, but in layman's terms, is John August and Craig Mazin do a podcast called Script Notes. It's been around for more than 10 years, and they're screenwriters talking about screenwriting. And John was on the negotiating committee, and he was also specific with AI, which is, as everyone knows, was one of our big important steps. So it's so fun because on his podcast, which is free and all that, he did all these what they called sidecasts, where he really broke it down in layman's terms, what was going on with the strike, what are the terms. And he just did a great one where he goes through kind of what we won, like why we would care. Yeah. But I remember the things that they talked about, and the organization was talking about. You got to remember, we negotiate every 3 years. We were supposed to negotiate in 2020. So meanwhile, before this streaming, we didn't have Amazon. We didn't have Apple, Right. I mean, Apple is a tech company. Amazon's a commerce company. All of a sudden, these streamers that aren't from a Hollywood background, that we don't have negotiations with, our language isn't even in the contract. Don't quote me. I can't remember, but usually you're dealing with we call it the minimum basic agreement, and we're wiggling things around, Right. In this case, what's new is like 79 pages. Because there was so many precedents and things that had to be set. 2020, the pandemic, when we should have been moving forward, we couldn't do that. We were in a global pandemic. So that meant this was going to be heavy lifting. But I am so grateful. There's so many things, but during it, I had to get creative, right? I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I can't just not sell. I can't pitch. And if in my case, it could take me a year of pitching to sell, I got to do something. And to be honest, just mentally, I love creating. That's my therapy. My therapy, you want to call it, there should be something instead of toxic positivity about toxic, escapism of writing, because to me, writing is my place to hide. I can create these magical worlds that I can be safe in and I can be happy. And it's no coincidence I came from being a war correspondent and a crime reporter, really dark, the worst stories of humanity, to writing Christmas. Because it is my happy, safe place that I used when I was a correspondent and came home, and it made me happy. And that's what I want to write. So I thought about it, and I was like, one of the movies that made me the happiest that I did was with Lifetime. And we can talk about it more because it's a great also behind the scenes stories. And I've never talked about it, of how I even got the gig to do this, because it's a funny story, whether you're a screenwriter or not, because it's just one of those, behind, inside baseball type of stories. Is it inside baseball? I'll say behind baseball. Yeah. I'm like, I better not mess up.
But that's what this is about. This is about inside baseball. That's why this podcast is more like a nerdy kind of thing. But
yeah, exactly. That's why this story, you're going to love it. So remind me to tell you that story. But what I did was I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I kept my book rights. So when you sell a movie, most of the time they buy everything and own everything, but you can carve out rights. And in my case, I carved out book rights. And then one of the reasons was, it was also kind of that therapy. It was like a joke. When you write your first movie and they buy it, you think, well, okay, great, let's go. Sure, there's going to be some changes. Sometimes they take one sentence of your, 100-page script, and that's it. They love the kernel of an idea. Bottom line, it's going to change a lot. And so if you're sensitive and you worked years massaging that sentence or that scene or that character and they get cut within 1 second, you're heartbroken. And I heard an executive say once, where they're like, we're cutting this, we're cutting that, we're cutting this. And somebody was like, well, wait, you can't. And they go, hey, either when you have the money to make it, you can do whatever the hell you want, or B, go write a novel where you can be in charge. So for screenwriting, for me, books are therapy because I wrote go ahead.
No, I was going to say also that's true in journalism too, because your stuff is edited. And even, I work in radio. If I write something, I can spend all this time and then the anchor could just change it on air or he can add something. So, I think basically if you're a professional writer, expect your stuff to be edited and changed.
Yeah, exactly. And the only thing you have control over, especially in movies, is if you write the book. So I thought, I'm going to keep the book. So my first Hallmark movie was called Christmas Camp. I kept the book rights while we were shooting Christmas Camp,
which I saw.
July, yay. I started writing the book because I wanted it to come out at the same time. And I got a deal with HarperCollins. And the idea was they both release at the same time. I had this whole master plan. And then my movie disappeared. Talk about inside baseball. It was like, where's my movie? The director's calling me. I go, I don't know. You're the director. You're the, directors and feature films are the boss. Once you're a writer, you often you turn it in to the director in studio and you're never talked to again. It's not that they're mean. It's just, they don't have time for you. You're lucky if you know when your own movie is airing. Usually I find out via, like the news media, just like everybody else. You are so out of the picture. Mm-hmm. But in this case, I had everybody in the picture asking me, I'm like, why would you ask me? I haven't been on set. I don't know anything about this. But the movie sort of disappeared. We didn't see it come up for Hallmark. We knew it was made. And then all of a sudden, a friend in Canada in November said, hey, I see your movie Christmas Camp is going to be airing in Toronto. And I'm like, on one of the channels there? He goes, no, in a theater.
Wow.
I was like, in the TV world, there's what's called MOW, made for TV. And then there's theatrical release, which is, your movie theater. Mine was made for TV. That's how I was paid, which is a lot lower than theatrical. And I'm like, what do you mean? And so sure enough, he took a picture. There's the marquee. There's my movie poster. By the way, a different poster. So I was like, what is happening here? So I flew to Toronto. I was living in Manhattan at the time, hop, skip. And I do my travel show. So I love Toronto, another great city. So I pop up to Toronto and I saw my movie, Margaret. I bought popcorn. I bought my ticket. I'm like, this is insane. There was like 4 people in the movie theater because it turns out they didn't advertise it. They didn't. And I can't speak exactly, but my guess is I've heard people release theatrically and there's something with money incentives, even with SAG, with actors and residuals. I'm not sure. I was not WGA at the time. I wasn't union, so I wasn't getting the residual anyway. But there's something about releasing it theatrically that changes things. Then that was 2000.
Well, how long did it run for in the theater?
I don't know. I'm not sure. A couple of weeks at least, because the guy told me it was probably through Christmas, and it was up before Halloween, he said, because I remember there was those Halloween scary things, too. And so then next year, Hallmark released it as their Christmas in July. So it was their premiere,
which
they have a whole thing, Christmas in July.
Yeah,
and then it went immediately, it took off because you know how you watch the same Hallmark movies over and over and over and over. And I was so excited about that and honored, like, yay, every year I'll be able to watch it. Nope, mine disappeared. And it went in, they were doing can't remember what it was called, but it was a paid where you pay $4 or $5 and you got special Hallmark movies. It was a pay on demand. Right. And so it went into that. So it was getting money there. And then the DVD came out, which also back then didn't happen. So I think there was a partnership of a kind of a co-release. And again, to this day, I don't know. It's my movie and I have no idea, but I did see in a theater and different poster and then a Hallmark poster and Christmas in July. But what was cool about it is it was all about an executive that really wanted this account because she just wanted something to get her big promotion. And it was a Christmas toy account and she wasn't into Christmas. So her boss was like, I'm not letting you pitch this. You don't even like Christmas. She's like, I can do Christmas, right. Because she wanted the job. And that's when he booted her off. He says, okay, you go do Christmas camp, come back and we'll talk. And it's kind of like a boot camp where you had to mark things off your list. So all of that said,
the idea is cute.
And after I wrote it, and I think this is what we do as creatives, right? Margaret, you can talk about this too. So I wrote a Hallmark movie, then I wrote the books. Then I started thinking, I'm like, this is actually smart. Why isn't there a real Christmas camp? Right. Why isn't there a place we can really go to relax and reset before the holidays, to turn in our phones, to lean into nostalgia, to do baking, cooking, making cocktails, doing crafts, whatever the heck makes us happy. So I trademarked it. Oh, I have my hat. I have Christmas camp. That's now.
Where can we get that?
Oh, yes, you can get on my website. So
Okay.
you go on KarenSchaler.com and you click under, and there's Christmas camp and you can see them. And I have t-shirts. Oh, I have tons of swag. I have t-shirts, I have mugs, I have all that kind of stuff because I created a real life Christmas camp experience at a 5-star hotel. It sold out 400 room nights in 5 minutes of a tweet. Yes, somebody tweeted, I wish there was a real one. I have not, a million followers. I have like 16,000 followers. I just said, there is. And I had set this up with The Phoenician in Phoenix, Arizona. It's this beautiful 5-star luxury property. And we hadn't even put the descriptions out there, Margaret. We just put Karen Schaler's Christmas camp, bring a Hallmark, Lifetime type movies to life, feel like you're living in a Christmas movie. And we had 4 days and it sold out so fast. Wow. So then we added another one. It sold out. And then the pandemic hit, and I'm bringing it back now where I'm talking to hotels about doing the 12 days of Karen Schaler's Christmas camp. And I don't have, to be honest, where I'm at, I don't have the time. I'm like trying to juggle. Who can I do? So next year will be really the big launch. And even guess what I'm going to do? Christmas in July, because that's a thing.
That's
right?
A thing. Why do you think that's a thing? Why is that a thing?
I know why it's a thing. I actually researched it. You'd be appreciative of the history. I'll have to send you the link because you got to read the whole story. I did a whole TV segment and it had all these great like black and white pictures, but there was actually a Christmas camp developed. It was a girls' camp. And I can't remember if it was 50 years old, almost 100 years old. And it's the middle point to Christmas. And the owner loved Christmas so much, they decided when they had this girls' summer camp to do a whole Christmas week and make it Christmas camp. And they didn't call it Christmas camp, but it was just, Christmas in July. And it started spreading because the love of Christmas, which is why Hallmark is starting their Christmas programming earlier than ever, 10 days before Halloween. People used to have a fit if it was before Thanksgiving. They're like, let's do each holiday. Now it's even before.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Halloween. I think there's 2 reasons. I think, first of all, the need that we need that type of content, it's a commerce type of situation. So I think that they see, especially with everything going on in the world right now, we need that more than ever. We know leaning into Christmas, and it's about community. It's the one time of year where people are kinder, people are more apt to help each other and charity. And I feel like when things are just sideways in the world, that we lean in, we can count on that. It's like a safe place to land. And then the second one, it's a $1 billion business, Margaret. If you look up the numbers, it is shocking. The people that love Christmas love it so much. So if I'm a marketer and I'm trying to make money, I'm going to make it earlier and make my shopping earlier. My new book that came out, I just released it yesterday, and that's early October. There are people releasing their books in September because you have a longer time to. There are some people that released in July. Just like we released some Christmas movies in July. And it's because the audience is there. They want Christmas. I didn't even think about it, but my book this year it's the same title as my movie. It's called Every Day is Christmas. And so I was talking about this, doing a TV segment, and they said this exact same question. Great question. Why are we seeing it early? I'm like, people need it. The demand is there, and people want every day to be Christmas, right? Just like the title of the book. But it really is about, from the business side, like the Hallmarks and everything, it's commerce. If you can get people watching, if you can make, turn and burn and get this content out there, advertisers are happy, people are happy. And, for me, I don't know about, your listeners, but people really want to lean into that Christmas. They might even grumble about it's too soon, but you put on The Grinch or you put on one of those, Christmas movies, and there's just something that clicks in your brain back into your past. And no secret, I've shared this. People assume that I had the most magical Christmas life because I write magical Christmas. I don't want to see a crappy Christmas. I know there's a few out there, but I'm like, leave Christmas alone comedy. I'm a comedy girl too, but I'm like, don't mess with Christmas. But I realized why. I was like, just my mom and I, only child. She was a public school teacher. She had to work 2 jobs. We didn't have a lot. It was not fun. I remember one Christmas, my mom couldn't go get a tree. She was too sad. So I went and got the Charlie Brown. I got the branch in the backyard, and true story. And I'm only child. I always wanted one of those turkeys on the table and Christmas lights. And I always wanted that. So how lucky am I that as an adult, now when I escape into my world, I get to create all those magical moments that I wanted to have as a kid.
Well, it just goes to show that, just because we don't have certain things as kids or certain points in our life, it doesn't mean that that's it. We can always create these memories.
Exactly.
And experiences. Yeah.
I think that's why writing is so powerful. Like every single person that's listening to this, everyone has a story, and whether or not you want to write it down, because maybe that's not your thing, you know, but I tell people, if you're not a writer, record it. Just get on your iPhone, you know, and record your story. Maybe it's something special with a grandparent or a child or something you don't want to forget, because that is probably the best memories, you know, that you're going to have. You know, I've been dealing with, you know, some family members, you know, dealing with different kinds of dementia, you know, that are so heartbreaking. And what is the one thing dementia steals from us? Our memories. And it's why we take pictures. And it's why we tell stories, you know, so if there's a way to put it down, which is why when I write like a book and I think, okay, long after I'm gone, I hope this is in the library, because I love libraries. I do a lot to, as much as I can, to support libraries. Any library that reaches out to me, I do Zooms for free. And I didn't even know people charged. That shows you how I am, Margaret. Like, different libraries, I said, yeah, I'll do a Zoom. It was during the pandemic, you know, for your people, you know, to do the Q&A of writing Christmas movies, behind the scenes of Christmas movies, you know, all those fun things. And a lot of libraries said, we just can't afford it. We don't have a budget. And I'm like, no, I'm doing this for free. Yeah. You know, and I still do that because
some libraries pay. It's not common. Okay. But I have a question. You mentioned Toronto. Okay. I've been there many times. I know you said you really like it. One thing I noticed about Toronto is they don't really have great architecture, because I think they tore down a bunch in the 50s or 60s or something. So why do you think, what do you think makes Toronto so great?
I mean, it's definitely a big city. I mean, one of my favorite is, you know, Montreal.
Why do you like Montreal? I've never been there. Everybody loves Montreal.
Oh my goodness. Montreal is a fairy tale. Montreal is like what I write about. You know, I mean, it is one of my all-time favorite. And you have like old Montreal, the little cobblestone streets, the little teeny places where there's a fire burning, you're drinking your little wine next to it with a little cheese board, just charming, quaint, cute. I mean, you just feel like you've transported yourself back into one of these magical fairy tale lands. I just like Toronto as, you know, a large city for Canada, obviously, because it's so close to get to, you know, from New York. And I feel like it's like the best kept secret of things. It's not shouting at the top, like we're the best in theater or we're the best in food. You know, they're just sort of under the radar, but they have a lot of really cool things. Like I think culture, they have some really cool things in the arts and forward thinking and the culinary. I mean, they're not, poor little Toronto, they're not, and Toronto tourism would be watching this, they would agree. They're not like on the radar as we are this one thing, you know, like other big cities have. But I just think they're a great city. And first of all,
I love the lake.
Yeah. And our dollar is so strong there, you know, it's still strong there.
I've been there when it wasn't strong, but also I like the fact that what I like about going to Toronto is even when down here, when things are going badly economically, I went up there and like, wow, it seems so stable up here because they made some good decisions financially. Absolutely.
You know, a favorite place I would go, and easier for you to go. When I was in Manhattan, it was a lot easier than being out west here, but Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada is it's like, especially Labrador, it's like the place that time forgot. I've never seen a more beautiful place. If you go on, and I've been to 68 countries, if you go on my website, traveltherapytrips.com, one of my favorite videos is chasing icebergs, where every year the icebergs break off and they come floating by. And it's just, you know, when you realize only 10%, when they say that's the tip of the iceberg, it's only the tip of the iceberg. I didn't realize that only 10% is below the surface. So when you see these icebergs as big as, you know, 16 houses put together, and you just imagine, you know, how much is, I'm telling it the wrong way. Only 10% is above the surface. Sorry, I told that wrong. But it's just amazing. And I feel like when I did my travel show, those hidden gems, it's why in my screenwriting now, I'm able to pull from these different experiences. I always have recipes, like because I wrote this during our strike. I started May 2nd. And started writing this. I want to see which one I did. Oh, okay. So this is I did this for my friend whose daughter is gluten-free peppermint shortbread, Christmas magic bars. Try saying that fast 5 times. But I put all these different kinds of recipes, and they're either ones that I've created or that I've met on these journeys. And that's what's so amazing about traveling. So my hope, like after all of this, my ideal, while I liked writing features, I want to continue doing travel therapy. I want to meaning going to different places all over the world, meeting people, sharing that, and I can write anywhere in the world. So one of my books and movies I spent a month in Portugal. Another one I spent a month in Spain. And everybody
says great things about Portugal. Everybody.
Awesome.
It is
It's
the
awesome.
place to go. Yeah.
It's awesome. I went like 20 years ago, and then I've been, more recently. They used to
Right.
call it the poor man's Spain because it's so affordable. And now, of course, it's like the fact that you're saying everyone says it's great, it's on the radar. But I stay in these charming fishing villages that are teeny tiny that nobody knows about. I always say I don't want to go if it's in a tour guide or nowadays online featured. I'm not going.
But how do you communicate with them if they don't speak English? How do you communicate with them?
Oh, almost everybody speaks a little English, and I always try to learn basic. I think that's a good thing. No matter who you are, learn hello, goodbye, how much, where's the bathroom, how to order wine, where's food, things like that. But almost everybody speaks some English, and it's really fun because I did go on this. There were these 4 women. I rented this house from one woman, and she had her friends, and she almost spoke no English. She was French. One of the women was from Serbia, and then the 2 other women, one was from France. They were eclectic. A lot of people end up in this little town called Altea. It's beautiful. Actually, that's Spain. Altea, Spain. Sorry, that wasn't. I was in a town called Oleao in Portugal. But then when these women picked me up, we spent a whole day, and they were driving around showing me, and it almost looked, I should put it in a movie. It's one of those teeny little cars that are, as long as my arms. It was me in the front and 3 women in the back that couldn't even fit. We were pulled over at some point by some border police. I don't know why. We were probably looking like we were having too much fun. None of us spoke the same language, but yet we had wine, and we did a picnic, and we found a way. It was one of my best memories. And I'm glad. Thank you for asking me that, because it kind of sparked that. That's a great memory.
Okay, so let's hear about the inside baseball situation.
Okay. I'm so excited. So, all right. So
I love stuff. I love entertainment news. Okay, go ahead.
I know. Okay, it's all timely. And because it's not just shameless promotion, but it is explained where this little baby came from. So my very first movie,
which is Every Day is Christmas.
No, that was my first movie, was A Christmas Prince. So for Netflix.
Oh, I mean, the book you held up, though.
Yes. Thank you.
Every Day is Christmas. Yeah.
Thank you. And this is on Amazon Prime, the movie. It's like $2 or $2.99 to watch. And then, of course, the book is out everywhere online. And then we'll talk about my other AI project, afterwards. I call it my AI project because we were on strike and AI was a focal point. And it's funny how, like I said, turning adversity or weird things into fuel. It's you never know what you're going to come up with. So what happened was the very first movie I did what's called the spec script. And so I wrote a script, I researched who made them, I reached out to the production company, they liked it, they optioned it, they then went to Hallmark, Netflix sold it, I'm done, yay, great. So then the second movie, I had another spec script, producer got it, exact same thing. It was me and the producer having a glass of wine, meeting and what have you. So now,
was this in New York or something, or?
Actually they were LA. Most of the producers, I was living in Manhattan. Okay. So I would fly to LA and just spend a week and meet with people. And it's funny because I went to, I'm from Seattle, I went to school, graduated Cal State Fullerton, graduated Calabasas High School, but don't judge, I was a nanny my senior year. That's why I was there. I was not one of those rich Calabasas kids. I was one of the poor people that couldn't afford out-of-state tuition. So I was a nanny for a family in Calabasas. That's how I got to Cal State and didn't have to, I lived a year, my senior year in high school. So back to the story. We have we have A Christmas Prince and we have Christmas Camp, and Christmas Camp is about, it's going to come out, and this is 2018. And so they're shooting it and everything. Yeah. Meanwhile, they always say have other scripts ready. So I had another spec script, because if that door opens for you, you can wait your whole life. You don't want to have my Netflix hit A Christmas Prince and go, what else you got? And me spend a year writing, they'll forget all about you.
Exactly.
So I had a script. So that's how the Hallmark one happened. So I had another script, and Lifetime had it. And so all of a sudden I got called into the Lifetime A&E, building in New York City. And that's where I was living. So super easy meeting. And I'd never done an executive meeting before. So here I am, 2 movies sold, but yet besides meeting a producer for lunch or having a glass of wine, it wasn't like an executive meeting with Hallmark or Netflix executives, right? I hadn't done that. So this was a first. There was no production company in between. Lifetime itself, the executives called me in. So I go into the building, I'm all excited to meet everybody. And it was just like you'd see in some of those movies where you're walking into the hall, it's this big glass, beautiful building, and it's those long tables, and then there's all the chairs, like those legal, like the ones you see where they put you at one end. It's some kind of negotiation tactic where you're separated. So we sit down, and there were 3 executives. And they were kind of the bosses, or close to, of making these magical Christmas movies. And so I'm already like, I had studied my script. I was ready if they said, can you do this? Can you do that? Because they're going to ask you about changes, I'm ready to do anything that they want. I'm just like fired up. So before they start off, you always do the chit chat. So they're just asking me, I don't know, weather, whatever we're talking about. I had seen some cookies in the other room, one of those big platters of cookies. So I said, well, are we going in a room that has cookies? And it was so funny because I'm kind of, our personalities are similar. We just joke around. So I'm just walking with these executives that they're very official. And I'm just like I am now, because I'm just pretty real. I'm like, are we going to get those cookies? So why are we passing the cookies? And he's like, would you like cookies? We can get you cookies. I mean, it was so serious. Right. And I still tease him to this day. I was just like, no, I was kidding. Kind of not kidding. I kind of need cookies next time. So anyway, we sit down. And I'm just waiting for them to tell me what they want, or how they want me to change my script or what we're going to do. And they start off small talk, and then they say, oh, we got to tell you the big news. And I'm like, okay. Now, Hallmark and Lifetime, they both will have.
Wait, first of all, are you allowed to talk about all this? I just realized.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I would not tell you things I'm not allowed to.
Okay. So make sure.
They wouldn't. I'm not allowed to share contractual things, obviously. Right. Funny side story on that. I did a TikTok talking about salary, but talking about what, the going rate of Christmas movies are in general. It's out there for everybody. I didn't talk about mine specific, and people got mad that I didn't share my exact salary. I'm like, guys, there's no one that can share their exact salary because it's in a contract, you know? Exactly. But I gave you range and tips that I wished I had known when I negotiated, to be frank. But anyway, so yeah, this is just fun. Like you said, inside baseball, fun story. So I go in there and they start telling us, it's just me. They start telling me about, they're going to do like probably 20 or 30 Christmas movies, but the showcase, the piece de la resistance, is going to be starring Toni Braxton. They got her on a contract. So I was like, what? And it was in the trades, I think, already and all that. They said, yeah, it's going to be amazing. I'm like, oh my goodness, is she going to sing? Is there going to be original music? So we're just talking about it and we're having a great old time. And they were going kind of on and on about it. And this is a part, I haven't talked to them like face to face and said this, but they probably, would tell the same story, meaning they probably knew that I was clueless. That's why I love telling stories that make myself look ridiculously clueless, because I hope it opens.
Well, it sounds like you're writing, because some of the people are like that too. They're sort of oblivious. Like some of your characters are sort of oblivious, and then they come up with these magical things. Well,
and I was just thinking, I'm a smart girl. I know I'm blonde and I talk fast and I'm really hyper, but I'm a smart girl.
But that whole blonde thing, that's like an old stereotype.
No, but people still, I still think people totally, especially because I'm bubbly. I kind of fit the bubbly, and then my name's Karen, so we can't even, don't even go down that road with me. Okay. And that's bullying as far as I'm concerned. Quit using my name as an adjective. But anyway, and then by the fact that I said that just makes me more of a Karen. So, the adjective. So I can't win on that. But anyway, so I'm sitting there, they're going on and on about how amazing this Toni movie is, and I'm nodding, I'm listening. But in my mind, Margaret, I'm going, that's awesome. That's awesome. When are we going to get to my movie? Because I have all the stuff I don't want to forget, to say. And I want to be like on it. I don't want to ramble like I am now. I want to be like, I have points to make, very important points. So finally, they're just talking about, and they're not even talking about what they're going to do. They're just talking about in general and, these things. And so they said, so what do you think? And I'm like, I said, about my movie? And they're like, no, about the Toni Braxton project. Right. And I'm like, well, I think it sounds amazing. So I, how fabulous it's going to be, because it is, obviously it's Toni Braxton.
Major.
Yeah, major. And so I'm telling how impressed I am and how much the audience is going to love it and just all the things that you would say. And they're like, so what? Okay, so are you interested? And I'm in what? And they were, I know that's why I say, like, they would probably say, because I think they thought it was so stupid. I'm like, in what? And they're like, in pitching for it.
Wow.
And I didn't know what that meant. Remember, I'd only sold spec scripts. So I wasn't 100%. I mean, I'm not dumb. I figured. So I think what you do in that situation is you ask. So I just said, well, what do you mean exactly? No, what exactly are you looking for? That's what I said. Well, what exactly are you looking for? And they said, well, before we start, we have a ton of top Hollywood writers in LA and but we like your writing. That's why we brought you in. So this, script, they go, that's why we brought you in case you want to pitch on this one. And I'm like, okay. And the story that I like to tell is two things. They only gave me one line. A lot of times you'll go in and they'll have a concept, they'll have a lot, and then the writer has to do it. They just said that Toni wants to be Scrooge. That was it. And they said, we were thinking, she'll start off, because it's a rom-com always, that during the Christmas time. And they're like, we'll start off. There's a guy, she breaks up. It's her, not him. She goes through her lessons, happily ever after, yada, yada, the Christmas Carol. And I'm like, okay. So And I remember they're like, all right. And they start kind of standing up and I'm going, okay, well, and what about my Christmas movie? And they were like, oh yeah, we really like it. But you kind of there's some similarities in that, to this idea without giving anything away. And I'm like, oh, they said, so, we'll talk to you about that one next year, but this would be the big one. Let's see how let's see. So it's like, okay. And
especially since they got that huge star to come on. So.
Yeah. But they'd also told me as I got walked out to the elevator by one of the executives, it was so lovely. And she just said this, I said, this is a great opportunity. I just wasn't expecting this. This is amazing. I'm really excited. And I said, but how much when you say pitch, like, how much am I supposed to write? Because this was before I was union. If I was union, I could not write for free because that's one of the things we do not do. Right. Or else we'd be doing free work our whole lives.
Right.
But I wasn't union. I was just starting out in the industry. And she was like, just a couple pages, like a summary, give us your idea, your take on what this story would be. So it was really from scratch. And I remember I got in the Uber and I was thinking, oh my gosh, first it's Toni Braxton, which is not anything more intimidating when you're such a strong, powerful woman that you want to do right by. And then second, A Christmas Carol, one of the most beloved classics of all time.
Yeah.
So I just said, I'm not going to obsess. So I wrote it and sent it in the next day. And I remember when I sent it, they were like, wait, what's this? And I was like, that's my pitch, whatever you call it. Because, and they were like, well, don't you want to take more time with it? Most people take a week or two. I didn't know that.
Right.
You know why, Margaret? I'm
Deadline.
a news reporter.
Right. Deadlines.
Exactly.
Very tight
Every
deadlines.
day, every day I would turn 3 stories a day.
Yes.
I'd be on the 5, 6, and 11 o'clock
Right.
news. What is this 2-week stuff?
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
brain surgery here. I'm like, no. Plus I had to write a novel and I had another movie shooting. So I was like, chop, chop. Plus they said I wasn't going to get it. I kind of felt like sometimes in Hollywood, because it's all about personalities as in any job, it's like a test. I thought maybe they have no intention of giving me this, but they want to see how I am in a room. Am I willing to take notes? Am I willing to be a team player?
Wait, hold on. You just went briefly by. So you're saying that in Hollywood, it is about personality. It's not.
Of course. It's all personality. That's why they meet you. It's called like a chemistry test. There's 1,000 great screenwriters, but who do I want to work with for 2 years? Who do I want to be in the trenches with? Sometimes literally.
That's sort of similar to media, because
I think
sometimes people like your reputation
anything
goes around town. You know what I mean?
And it's not just that, but your actual personality. Like, how you could have a brilliant writer, but they're like negative Nelly. Do you really want to sit in a room, in a writer's room where someone's like, oh, this sucks.
No, that's what I mean about the reputation. It's not just this person can do this. People know what the people are like. I mean, you could be in a huge city like LA and it could be very small because people know.
And it's not even about being not a great person to work with because you're difficult or you stand up, but literally your personality. Are you positive? Are you a team player? Do you bring ideas? Are you going to complain? Are you someone that's going to just be negative all the time? So that's what I've been told. A lot of times they bring you in a room and they've just seen who you are.
I agree.
Do I like you? And so when I've gone to Hollywood, I just reached out to a producer because, like I said, we're for the first time able to do that again. And we'd meet for sushi. I'd fly in from New York, and we'd go to sushi. And so when I reached out, I'm like, hey, and we basically never talked about the movies, like what my job would be.
It's a vibe check.
And then when you get home, you send the script.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 1,000 people can write a script, but do I want to work with this human? Do I want this human in my life for, feature films? It could be 10 years. Yeah. So it's really about your personality and being someone that can play well with others in the sandbox. Yeah. And so I thought maybe that's what it was, type of thing. Like I didn't really know if they might've already had a writer. I just wasn't sure, but I didn't waste time worrying about it. So like a week later, I was called back into the office and I remember they were kind of like, wait, they like, how they hold up your paper and they're like, what is this? We gave you one note and I'm not going to tell you what it was, but like one thing. And they go, and you didn't do it. Ooh. I'm like, yeah, no. I just didn't see that being a story for Toni. And they're like, why? Oh. And, they're kind of serious. And I told them why. And I just felt like especially a strong Black female woman, I just felt that this was just more powerful of who she was and who she represented. And it was kind of quiet. And I know I was thinking, hey, again, I didn't think I was going to get this thing. And then they basically said, well, and that's why out of all of them we looked at, she picked yours.
Wow.
And that's how I got my opportunity.
That's incredible.
And I had to write it from scratch, Margaret. So totally different. Me sitting here in my pajamas, writing a script and giving it to you done. Then I don't have anything, meaning I'm going to have to collaborate. I had the idea, but I'm going to have to talk to Toni and the producers and Lifetime. And one time Lifetime could say, we want a pink pony. And Toni's saying, if there's a pink pony, I won't do the movie. I literally became a therapist. And other screenwriters will say this too, when you're in a big group. And I remember one time, and it wasn't on this situation, it was a different movie, where the two sides, the network and the producer, both had totally opposite, and they kind of were, healthy, going back and forth. I'm in the middle. I have to actually write one of them, just, so I'm just like, hey, you guys are my bosses. Pick what you want. I'll make it happen. I can advise them, but at the end of the day, they have their own idea. I've learned to zip it, listen to their vision, and make it happen. That's my job.
But what was interesting about your situation, though, is that they gave you an idea and then you had a vision and you went with your vision. So they could have rejected you, but you stuck to it, and then it got approval. Yeah, exactly.
And it was a pretty big difference of what I did, and it was funny. And it wasn't set, because sometimes I remember my last movie, they basically said, we want a snowflake festival, because somebody had talked to them about a snowflake festival. And I'm like, okay. And that was it. Maybe sisters. All right, you got it. But up to that point, I had everything in my mind, and they bought a script, and then we changed my script based on their notes. This was the first time I'm writing from scratch. So then that aired, and it was really beloved. And then the next year, which is 2019, they called me really late, like March or April. I pitched, then what do you do? So I send ideas, just log lines. We call them these little short, like what you read on Netflix when they say a girl goes to summer camp and finds her old boyfriend. I mean, it's really, really bad, but it's just a little blurb. And they literally will go down and go, no. This one's interesting. Tell me more about it. Then maybe you write a paragraph, then you write that 2-sheet, how the process goes. And so I was doing that, and Lifetime hadn't picked one of mine, which, there's millions of people pitching. Then all of a sudden I got a call, they were in a bind, something fell through. Could I come in? Meaning I didn't actually go in, but could I come into the project? And I'm like, okay, well, what do we have? And they said Snowflake Festival. I'm like, wow. Okay. And that was my last movie that came out in December of 2019. And then of course the pandemic hit. I had a Hallmark movie that, I was working on developing that, waiting for it to get greenlit. I mean, it was actually one of my movies, Finding Christmas. There was that one. But so now fast forward, I talk about use adversity for fuel. Fast forward, that's how many years? 5 years ago, 2018, Every Day is Christmas came out with Toni Braxton. And we can go back to that if you want. I got to be on set for the first time, because that was pretty life-changing. Wow,
I'd like to know about that.
Yeah. Okay. So, but now,
I've seen sets around the city here, but I've never worked on it.
Well, it is crazy. As a writer of 4 movies, I've only been on one set. So normally we don't get to go on the set, and you learn so much, and there's so many fun stories on that. But 5 years later, I'm going into a strike. I have some health issues with family that I'm the sole caregiver for as an only child. I'm dealing with a lot, just let's say. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I've always written a movie or a book every year, and to keep my Christmas brand going, but also my Christmas camp, I want something new and fresh every year, whatever theme we have. So if you go to Christmas camp every year, you're going to have a few of those classic traditional things. But the idea is, what cool theme do we have this year? So I really wanted something. And so that's when I said, it's the first time I said, I'm bringing it back. I'm going to write the novel. There was more I wanted to tell. Good. There was more, especially about Toni and Toni's character. Movies got to move. Right. And a lot of it, you get in a course in the acting, but this allowed me to tell that. And so that's why I was so excited. And this is the first book. I got to see, I haven't shown anybody this. It just came out yesterday. And I literally usually get my books, and they were late. I think I heard a clunk on my door. I think that was UPS, honestly. But the very first time ever, because I was on the movie set, in the book, I include pictures from the movie set, just my own behind the scenes and stuff like that. So this meant so much to me to be able to bring this out to people. And because it was during the strike, I also felt like I was still, honoring my screenwriting chops, because I was literally printed out my screenplay, had it next to me when I started writing the book, So
what's it like to be on the set? Tell us.
That was okay. So one of the things I wanted to do, because this was my third movie, my Toni Braxton movie was my third movie. It had only been less than a year, but it was happening pretty fast. I said, I want to be on set. So I put it in my contract, because, I'm not WGA or anything. And even WGA, you have to have permission. And here's why. It's not that they're being mean to writers. This is my personal take. They shoot these things, you guys, in 16 days. They crank this out. You've never seen people work so fast.
Well, it's like old school Hollywood. No, it's like old school Hollywood when they used to do that.
It's like dangerous. I mean, you can't just be sitting there. I don't get to, I've seen some authors as a backup here. So I'm a screenwriter. I wrote the movie they're shooting. Authors, when they option it, because they don't like to pay a lot, especially the Christmas movies in general. I can say that because a lot of my friends I've met are authors. but they treat them like queens and as kings, as they should, because they're not giving them money. So they'll fly them in sometimes. They'll give them a director chair. They get to meet the actors. It's because, these are the authors that gave up those book rights to have somebody bring their story to life. That are just, half the people I know would do it for free because they're just so happy to have their book be made into a movie, But in my case, I'm the actual screenwriter. So one of the first things was it was being shot in, we call it Hollywood North. The majority of, at that time, the Hallmark, Lifetime movies, and still probably today, were being shot in Canada because they had the incentive and the tax kickbacks, all that kind of stuff. And so it was north of Vancouver. And I asked right away, when we were doing the contract, that if I could be on set. And so it was put in the contract with the director's approval. I had to pay my own way. And I don't think that's giving away anything in a contract. Again, I mentioned it's not standard to have a writer. And again, I'm talking specifically about my experience with the Christmas world. And I've met so many other writers now that, this is, when I say the norm, I'm not saying somebody couldn't get a different contract, but in general, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about Barbie, a feature film, right. That's like huge, making 100 million plus. Right. So it's just, low budgets and everybody's cranking it out. And so when I got to go, there's so many different stories, but the three things that stood out the most that were impactful is I got allowed to go. I got the dates approved, and my mom's in Washington State. And so my mom, who's like 77 years old, I think at this time. So I flew to Seattle and we drove up to Vancouver, and I got to bring her. And that meant the most to me because I didn't think in her lifetime, and who knows in mine, if I would ever have the opportunity again. Yeah. No pun intended on a Lifetime movie. So we decided to make it a little trip. And I remember we couldn't drive to the set. And this is a fun story I talk about behind the scenes. Sammy won't care if I tell the story. I always say, if everybody I know is listening, am I okay here? Because I like to share the tea, right. But I make sure that I'd say it in front of them as well. And this isn't any inside secret. It's just kind of a personal. I remember the executive producer said, there's only so many parking permits. And of course they have a house. The scene we were going was one of the houses. And so they said, you can't drive the car. We'll have one of our producers, our APs or somebody come get you and your mom, which was really nice because we were like a half hour away. I thought we could drive. So we stayed, but anyway. So his name was Sammy. I remember he had one of those Tesla, and it was his own car. So he loved that car. And so I thought that was so super cool. He's from Canada. A lot of times the production crews are Canadian, they have the US crews and then the Canadian crews. And anyway, he was so great. And back and forth that he took my mom, I asked him, what do you want to do? And, what kind of movies do you want to do? Because almost every time, whether you're an assistant or a PA or a producer, an associate producer, they all want to be at the top making the movies. Right. It's the progression. The whole mailroom story is true. When there was mailrooms still. I mean, how many people, Steven Spielberg, everybody talks about, I'm not sure if it was him, but I just listened to a podcast that he was in, which by the way was so good. But I just love, hearing the stories of working your way up in like every aspect of the business. So Sammy had all these ideas of what he wanted to do that, someday. And again, this was like 2018. So we get on the set and right away, we just wanted to be out of the way. No one has time to like, oh, hi, here's Karen, the writer. Everybody's moving really fast. So I just want to stay out of the way and get my mom, a chair so she can sit and be out of the way. And so nobody knows who I am, the writer. Everybody's running around. And I say that because I hear this really nice young man saying, who writes LED angels? How am I supposed to find 4 feet LED angels? This is ridiculous. And the other person's like, I know, we've been looking, we can't find any. Well, who would do that? And they're just talking and they look around and they see me and they're like, oh God, you're the writer, aren't you? And I'm like, yes. And just so you know, before I wrote 4-foot LED angels, I looked on Amazon and they're there for like $30. I said, so, because they were talking about having to build it. And, because that's what he was he was one of the set people, obviously. And so he was just like, I go, you have Amazon in Canada? Let me show you on my phone. And so it was kind of broke the ice. I said, okay, what else do you hate that I did? He goes, the crystal ornament, the heart ornament. And even the executive producer said it's hard to find. So on the book, in the movie, I won't give it away, but there is a crystal heart ornament that's very special in the movie. So when I was had the designer working with her, I said, okay, I just want this crystal heart ornament somehow because it signifies a lot. And it also reminds me of being on set with them going, and then we had to find that. We had to actually have it made, all of that. And then there were different things, like little tiny things. So seeing Toni, you know, for the first time, because I was supposed to go to LA and actually meet with her and kind of sit down and kind of just get to know each other. So, because I'm writing, it's her story. She's my boss, you know, I'm writing for her. She's like, you got to come over. We got to get together and do all this. And then she got super crazy busy, and it happened, you know, everything was under this crazy deadline. So I didn't get to meet her. So now I get to meet her, which was amazing because she was such a great collaborator, but she's hustling. Like and that was the other thing. One of the directors said to me, I think he was the second AD, second assistant director. He said, let me give you a screenwriting tip 101. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, you don't put your star in every scene. You give her a rest, you know, or him a rest. And because she's in and I said, well, a Lifetime, who's paying for everything. I said, well, Lifetime told me that she needs to be in every single scene because she's Toni Braxton is what people want to see. He was kidding. I was kidding. But the point was, that was something I hadn't really thought of. I mean, I knew she was the feature and the focus, but when I actually saw her running back and forth a set and makeup, I'm like, oh my God, that poor lady. I mean, look at that, you know? So everything from that to, I also fought for a child in the story. And if you see the movie, I don't want to say anything. It's one of, I think, the most impactful parts of the movie. But when you're just a producer and he's reading my script, he's like, yeah, nope, kill the kid. Nope, no kid. And I'm like, no, did you read it? Like, you have to have the kid. It's so important. And it was like my Tiny Tim, right? I have a lot of these light nods to A Christmas Carol. It's not straight Christmas Carol, but you'll see these wink, wink, nod, nod type things that kind of make it familiar and cozy. But the child was super important. And I remember and to his point, and I learned from him as an executive producer, he goes, okay, if there's a kid, that means I have to have tutoring. That means I could have to have this. It's hard to cast. It's expensive. So it better be worth it. I'll wait to read your script, the whole thing, but that kid better be worth it. Wow. And so when he read it, he goes, yeah, we're keeping the kid. That's wow. Great. And he loved the kid. So then I got to meet the little girl, and that was awesome. It was her first acting. The casting was done, you know, up in Canada. Of course, her mom was there, and she was just, oh my gosh, she's so perfect when you see it. It's just, I think I wished in another life I could have been a director or even casting where you see the people, you get so excited because you see them be brought to life, you know. It was so exciting. There were little things like craft services that people know the language. That's when everyone breaks and they have food that comes and they make it. But of course, but
I'm sure the stars can't eat that stuff because they've got to be really thin.
Oh no, I saw it. No, they were eating. I'm sure. I think Toni might have had, like, some people might have had their own dietary restrictions, but that's what craft services probably caters for different people. But in this kind of thing, everybody, you know, a lot of the people would wait in line, and then I didn't want to take anybody's food, you know. I'm like, these are working people. But you learn really fast. And I remember I'm in there and I'm like, they go, you can have anything. I'm like, okay, you know, it was learning little things. And then you sit down like in a picnic table in our case, because the weather was okay, you know, outside. And I'm sitting there learning from the photographer, you know, and it was just like the director of photography. And so I got to learn so much. They call it Video Village, which I didn't know what that meant. These are all things I didn't know. And that's where they set up all of the, you know, the cameras are, let's say, in the living room of a house, but out in the garage is where the director often is. And he has his camera set up and he's sitting there watching the screens, and he has his headsets on listening. So it's not like you think that the director's right in there. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, because that does, but from my experience,
it's more like a news director. Because I know news directors,
exactly. You're kind of, you know, and he's back there. Oh, don't get me wrong, they're talking to the actors before, but when it's actually time to shoot. So the Video Village would like move around, and it was usually pretty tight space. But I learned, the last thing I'll say, because I could go on and on about like the things I learned, but why I would push anybody to have a writer. Just that's something by the way, it's something we fought on for a writer's room for a TV series, to have writers continuing to learn and grow and go into production on their own show, because that wasn't happening with all the cutbacks in Hollywood, meaning we're not training anyone. We're not going to have any writers, you know, we're ruining the next generation. But in features, you just, again, you don't get to, unless you're one of the top people, et cetera, generally speaking, you don't get to do it. But I'll tell you why you should, at least if you can, because what helped me is I had an ensemble in Christmas camp. And and Every Day is Christmas. I had an ensemble in Christmas camp too. But if you watch Every Day is Christmas, there's a scene, and it's not giving anything away. It's Christmas Pictionary, where you're doing a Christmas songs, and, you know, you have the whiteboard and you're drawing, and the family's split into two, and they're calling out, you know, while the person's doing this. So yeah, I love that scene. Well, that was the scene that was one of the hardest scenes to shoot, because it was a huge family. So they had to shoot all the different rehearsals, reversals, all this stuff. It was really hard. Groups are hard. I had another one where they were like little things like picking up pine cones or something like that. And they were like, no. So if you ever, I want you to watch movies now, Margaret, and even TV series, if you notice that there's always a family around a table eating. So when there's a group scene, it's almost always around a table eating because it's easy to shoot. So if you want a whole family, you don't usually see them outside doing, and the big movies, yes. So that's why I learned, okay, don't put a bunch of people in a scene. And then I also learned, and this might have been 101, but I'd never been on a set. Like if you have a doorman and she comes, into her apartment building and, having him say Merry Christmas, or something. If he says a speaking part, a certain amount of lines, then he's paid triple than just an extra that opens the door. So that's why you'll see someone ordering coffee and they'll like, oh, the latte. And you see the person making it and smiling, but they don't say anything. So these were things that as a writer, I now incorporate. When I'm writing now, I learn from being on set. And then another thing I learned, because I didn't know, it was hot. It was like 100 and something degrees. It was the middle of summer. So I was wearing a dress, like, a comfy dress. And I was, like I always do, I'm wearing like sandals. And I remember the assistant director, I think that's who it was, John, he looked at me and he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, what? And he goes, you don't wear open-toed shoes on a set. Right. And that should be duh, but again, my first time,
So basically what you're saying is when you're writing these kinds of movies, think about how they're going to block it or think out they're going to shoot it. Well, that's like with TV too. Yeah.
Let me say this. It's interesting because I want to be careful for people out there looking to write. I was told, I'm a producer because when you work in TV news, we do all parts. We do the writing. Sometimes we do the editing. Sometimes we do the booking. We do everything, right? That's what we do. So I start thinking like a producer. There's this movie I'm doing where I have this big scene and I started cutting back. I'm like, oh, that's going to be so expensive. How are they going to do that? That's not in the budget. And I was told that's not your job. Your job is to dream the biggest dream. We'll fix it. We have ways that you don't even know of, and you're not the director. So you write it. But when it comes to, if I'm going to put a dog in, which I know dogs are very expensive, or a kid, it better be a payoff. Or if I'm going to have 16 scenes where there's 10 people in it, that scene better move the story forward. Not just be, oh, here's fun for everybody to get together. I'll just have everybody in the house when they get home from a dinner. You know what I mean? So it's more conscious of just being smart about it and really saving yourself later when you get in production and the scene gets cut. So
but that's a good point what you said about the group, though, because a lot of times people want to capture the group vibe because in real life, it's like that. Like, so for instance, a party scene or a club scene. Is that possible? Is that possible?
Absolutely. That's a whole different level because that's like extras. So now you're bringing in extras and that's like an extra shoot, meaning that sounds wrong because they're not even called extras. They're called, oh my gosh, what are they called? My friend does it all the time. She gets mad when I call them extras. I'm showing my age. What are they called? I'm not day players. Oh my gosh, anyone watching, do not blow up my social media with saying that I am so stupid. For this moment, I cannot remember. It's because I haven't slept, guys. I have launched a book and I think it's been 48 hours. But the people we know as extras that come on and get a day wage and they'll have the whole studio, they'll have the baseball field and the fans, in that. That's totally different. I mean, that's what AI is about now. You come in and you're one of the people in the stands for one day, you get paid $200. And then you signed away that they can use your face in that stand, another stand, anywhere they want. And they don't have to hire you ever again. Not to mention, you could go and do a Hallmark movie and they could use your face in porn.
Right.
They could,
that's what they're trying to fight, right? That's what the actor is trying to fight, right?
Okay. Exactly. And so that said, what they're talking about is I had like an ensemble where he had a family. And so it's really about like Toni and one of her coworkers. That's the story. But I wanted him when she arrived to see the family. They're all doing something and she's interrupting that, right? So that was okay the way I had it. But having the family have speaking parts and having a big group moving speaking parts and all of that, it better be worth it. So then I watched like 3 of my favorite movies, like from the holiday. Like, let's just bring up something. I was just watching it. And you really think it's the 2 characters, right? It's the two. You don't see big families. There's a couple scenes and you want to have that, but it's not very often, and the payout has to be there.
Well, and also another thing is that it's hard to follow groups because even on TV, when I just even see, talk shows, all these people blabbing at the same time, it's hard to follow.
Well, and that's why they say when you write a TV series as a writer, really don't introduce 15 people in 3 pages. If you want to like peel them out like family members, if you're doing Succession or something like that, there's a different way, of introducing characters in, and I think there's just so many different ways to do that. But I go back and I watch my favorite movies like the Harry Met Sally or the Love Actually or whatever. And that's when you really see, while there's big storylines with a lot of people, they have their separate moments. So it's this couple. And then there's a vignette of this couple, and then there's a vignette. So there's multiple storylines, but they're not all in the same place at the same time, where it'd be difficult. And some people would say, oh, Karen, you're thinking about it too much. Just write what you want to write. But I felt like I want to be a good partner to the producer.
Right.
I want the producer to get my script and go, okay, she thought about that. Yeah. One of the things that happened, it was traumatic. It happened before I got to the movie set. And I don't ever talk about this because it's hard. So I'm not going to talk too much about it, because not stuffing it down. Well, maybe I am, but my grandpa passed away like 2 days before I arrived on the movie set. So I went from the hospital to the movie set, and I was praying. There's a hospital scene in my movie, and I was praying they weren't shooting that scene because I didn't know how well I would do. But I was with my grandpa. I'm an only child. And then it was with my dad. He's an only child. So it was just us. And my dad wasn't doing well. Yeah, that's a big Schaler family for you, but that's all there was. And so there was a lot going on. I won't go into it. But there was a time when my grandpa, he was resting, he was in the ER and he was sleeping, but I got a text that they were shooting a scene. And I can tell you this again, it's not a giveaway, but it was a scene in a jewelry store is what they were supposed to do. And the last minute they lost the store. So like, do you have any ideas? Do you have any ideas? So they're literally, people on the clock, they're shooting. And I'm like, and then even before I could, the director's like, we're thinking just have the jewelry be brought to the guy's house. I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. Cause that's what when you're rich, people bring the jewelry to your house and you look at it. That's super rich. Yeah. So he's like, would you write that scene? So I remember sitting on the floor of a hospital in real life in the ER. It was a dirty, disgusting floor. There was nowhere to sit. It was super chaotic. I don't do well. I like it quiet to write. I haven't learned to wear headsets and have noise around me, but I remember knowing this was like my first time I'm ever doing this on the fly, knowing that directors, actors are literally waiting for the scene, dealing with doctors about my grandpa and writing a whole new scene. So when I saw that scene, I was really emotional because I just remembered writing it and where I wrote it. And it's very impactful to the story about the choices. So Christmas Carol is always about the choices you make and who matters most. So when I wrote this, I even wanted it to be more that way.
When you wrote Every Day is Christmas. Okay.
Yep. Every Day is Christmas. Thank you. When I wrote Every Day is Christmas, the movie, I wanted it to be about the decisions you make and about redemption and forgiveness and second chances, and really, it really hits home. And another backstory, I don't think Lifetime would mind me telling, because I don't think this was any secret. They do testing. We all know that for a movie. And most of my romantic comedies, they're just fluffy and light and it's super happy all the time. But we're doing a Christmas Carol. That's not a super light, happy, cheery story. The Scrooge has a lot to learn. He has not lived a good life. He's treated people poorly. Look at little tiny Tim, so you look at that. And so mine had some weight to it, different than my others. And when they first looked at it, what I was told from the executives is they're a little worried. It's a little dark, not dark, sad, but it's not, yay, happy Christmas, like always. Right. And I remember saying, it's a Christmas Carol. It's all there. The comedy's there. It's all there, but you have to have the lowest point to have the highest point.
Right.
And so, and thank God, my producers, Toni, everybody, the executives, my immediate executives at Lifetime, they all fought for that script to stay the way it is. And that's why I'm so proud of it. A lot of times your script will get changed by a lot of people that you might not even know or be aware of, but I was involved with every aspect. Then when I was mentioning going to Portugal, I'm in Portugal and they're in post-production and they do it, where they'll sometimes need a line added. And so they'll have the actor come back in and voice over a line. And it has to be when the actor's off camera, right? So you can't be looking at the lips saying the wrong thing. So you have to look line by line. So they had looked and there was a spot they wanted to add something. And so I had 4 seconds to try and figure out a way to say something, based on it. So they called me when I was there. Hey, can you write something? Here's the clip. Here's this. I was so on cloud 9 because I was involved. Remember the other ones, I didn't even know when they were airing.
Right.
So now I was involved. So that, and also the story, Every Day is Christmas. I know this is going to sound crazy. I don't watch A Christmas Prince. I don't watch Christmas Camp. I don't watch my last one called Rediscovering Christmas. I don't watch them every year. I actually don't watch them. I don't know how you guys are, but you work so hard on a book or a movie. I'm just kind of done. And then you always see things you want to change. So I just don't. However, this story that I wrote, the novel this year, Every Day is Christmas, I watch every Christmas because of the message. I want to remind myself of the message.
That's good.
That message is really important.
Okay. Now, another thing you did during the pandemic is you did a coloring book.
Yes, this is so
What's
crazy.
Up with that? What?
I know. Everyone's
How'd you come up with
much.
that?
And not only, okay, I'm going to tell you, this is even a crazier story. Not only that, I said this on TV today and it sounded so dirty. I'm like, it's an adult Christmas coloring book.
Right, it does sound dirty.
I know. And that's how they market it though, like on Amazon, because it's not a kid one, and Barnes and Noble, it says adult Christmas coloring book. But doesn't it sound dirty? Is that just our minds in the gutter? But I was just like,
no, because usually adult means adult content.
Yeah, adult, like rated X. Okay, so first of all, full disclosure, I never colored as a kid. I was the kid that colored outside the lines and got in trouble. So I just said, well, not doing that. I don't like art. I wasn't good at it. I tried to be super creative and called myself Picasso, and the teacher's like, not flying, not working with us, Karen. So I had one of those art teachers that ruined it for me, that really said, didn't let me go with, just quick on this, because I think this is great. If someone's watching, they wanted us to paint our breakfast. It was like some little paints, I think first or second grade. So I started trying to do the eggs or whatever, and it looked like a mess. So I just took my finger paints and went like this. So it was all this different green lines and kind of greens and yellows and stuff. And so everyone else has their little, really ridiculous little breakfast, little bowl of cereal or a little whatever. And she comes to me, she goes, what is this? Because, it's just was all, and I said, and she goes, you didn't follow directions. You got impatient and you didn't finish. I said, no, I did. That is what I wanted it to be. She goes, well, what is it? I go, it's green eggs and ham. It's green eggs and ham. I think that's darn creative. She gave me an F and said I was difficult. She's like, no, that's not. You're just being lazy. Because she saw me go like, I got frustrated. But no, I was creative and I did see green eggs and ham. I was pretty dang proud of myself. So here is the Christmas book, first of all.
Color Your Christmas Dreams.
Yes, it's called Color Your Christmas Dreams, a magical adult Christmas coloring book. It is 8.5 by 11, which is an awesome size. It's 122 pages. There are 55 Christmas scenes and 55 Christmas quotes. I'm going to read you a couple. I'm just going to flip through and see what I get. And what I want to show you is the picture. So I'm going to go explain them for your listeners. There's different pictures that I picked inspired by my movies and my novels, my stories. And so like this one is a bunch of different Christmas presents. This one's a heart. Then this one is like a little, I'm holding it wrong so people can't see, but anyway, listening, it's all of these amazing things. And so why a coloring book? Why in the world?
Why a doll? Because kids can color that in too.
Well, it's pretty intricate. That's kind of the thing. Like adults get mad if it's too easy. Let me show you, look at, you can see it. I know. And you explain.
It's a kid in
look at how fine lines. There's a lot of little teeny weeny lines. That's why you see all these details. Coloring pen, that's the word. Thank you. Coloring pens and all of that. So 2 things I wanted to do. We're on strike. I'm trying to figure out how to basically pay the rent, figure out how to make ends meet. And I'm trying to feed myself creatively so I don't go completely bonkers. So I'm on TikTok and I am trying to learn different creative things because that's what I do. I learned how I wrote movies and books. I wasn't, taught by anything other than research, things like this. And I saw this thing they were talking about. Keep in mind, AI was huge for us. That's what we were negotiating. So that's why I'm on strike. And they were talking about, these TikTokers were talking about how great side hustles, you can ask AI. Just chat, GB, whatever. I think I'm saying the right name.
GPT.
Yeah, thank you. Chat GPT. And so this one TikToker said she gave her skills. She gave how much she wanted to spend and how much she wanted to make. And knowing that, because she fed it, it's all about feeding it information. It gave her ideas of how she side hustles. So I don't know, it was like 11:30 some night and I'm trying to figure out how to pay my bills. And I'm like, okay, so I get on and I'm very good at prompting, meaning I'm obviously verbal. And so I know, and so I gave it, I put in my bio, I put in who I was, I put in what I did. And I said, acting like a career consultant, because you can say acting like an Emmy award-winning writer, acting like an SEO executive, whatever you want. I said, I did what the TikTok said. And I said, I wanted to make $10,000 and spend $100. And I said, and this has to exclude gambling, going to the casino, gambling, and any illicit, I was having fun, but, and nothing R-rated and no gambling. And so I said, go, and it go, and one of the first things that came up was an adult Christmas coloring book that could be Christmas type, I'm thinking, because they saw all my Christmas content. Mm-hmm. And then it even gave me numbers that there are coloring books, not mine. These are people that have been out there that are making $23,000 a month, Margaret, on Amazon. Wow. So I had said 10,000. And when you do a book, you very rarely make money, but it was the idea. There was a possibility. So it did it right. So then I was like, well, cover artists are expensive. I hire the top people. I'm holding up my book here showing how pretty this cover is. You have to do an interior designer, editors, it's $10,000, $15,000 to self-publish a book because I'm with HarperCollins. I was, and then I started my own publishing company during the pandemic when everything went sideways, just to continue to get out content at the timeline that I needed that didn't fit with traditional publishing during the pandemic. So I decided to try and lean in and use all the free resources and do it myself and just teach myself. It was supposed to be a weekend side hustle, like, okay, one weekend and I'm going to do this. But I also thought, how fun for Christmas camp. One of the activities we do, like cookies and cocktails, and we do stargazing and s'mores, and we do crafts. What about color your Christmas dreams, where we sit there with Christmas music and all of that type of stuff? And so I thought this would be fun for my upcoming Christmas camp. And it was harder than I thought. There was a lot more to deal with, than I thought. And then the other thing, I wanted to keep the price point under $10. A lot of them are $15, $16. That's so you can, somebody like me could make money. But after I made it, I'm like, you know what? There's so many people stressed. And I talked to my strike captain, and she was amazing. So in the WGA, they have captains that were on the line striking every day. And so every one of us members, 11,000 plus, we had a captain if we had a question, or if we were picketing, or we were getting schedules. And I just said something about, she was just under so much stress and trying to relax at the end of the day. And I told her what I was doing. And she was like, I think that's amazing. That's just another escape. You're escaping into an artistic world. Yeah. So I figured it would away. I had it for like $8.99. So there's almost no profit, but it was the point that it could be a gift under $10. And that's why I tell everybody, and me, Margaret, I try to give back, even though, I know it'll come back to me tenfold, never know when or how.
Well, wait, so has that happened? Has that happened that you go ahead? Well, no, I mean, I'm not talking about this in particular. I'm talking about in your life when you say you try to help other people and it comes back tenfold.
I'd like to think so. I mean, I don't
has that happened to you in general?
I can't think of one specific incident, but I think it's around us all the time. Like there could be some random act of kindness that someone does for me that I did for somebody else, but there wasn't one of those pay it forward, big, huge moments, but I'm stocking up. I just know one's coming because it's gotta be. But what I decided to do when people said they're going to give it as a gift, they want it autographed. So what I did is I have on my website at KarenSchaler.com, I have free things. We like free. And, and if you follow me on, my social media and Instagram, which is travel therapy, just to make it confusing because of the travel, everything else I'm at Karen Schaler. Facebook is at Karen Schaler official. And I do all these giveaways between now and Christmas. But so people can make the book and the coloring book a gift. I didn't, and tell me if you knew this. I think we've talked about this before, but I didn't know. Some author said, well, can you do book plates for us? And I'm like, well, what is that? So this is like a little sticky, and I designed it. And what it is, what would I say? It's 3.5 by 2.5, and it's beautiful. It has holly around it. It says my name, the little website, and then I can write in it like Debbie, always believe in the magic of Christmas, Karen Schaler. And then what you do is, that's why there's a title page in the book. At least that's the story, and I'm sticking to it. You can take this and you put it right in the book, and you have autographed copies of the coloring book or your other books. And so what I did is you just send me, it's on my website, a self-addressed stamped envelope. That's how I can figure out with everybody and not having to worry about doing envelopes and getting addresses wrong and all of that, and save with the cost. I pay for this, but they can get the stamp to me. Then I also have a bookmark that's like 9.5 by 2.5. I do a new one every year. These are very big in the author world. I have my autograph on it. It has other books. It's shiny. It's pretty. And people collect them. And so they know every year with the new book, there's going to be a new bookmark. So I have that on my website.
Now, I was going to say, wait, with the coloring book, so how did you draw it? Did you use AI?
Oh, yeah. Partly.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about. See, AI.
Yes.
So some people will say, hey, no, we should be using humans for AI, but then you yourself. So then artists would be upset. Like, why didn't she use a real artist?
Oh, no. That was the thing, because I did. I reached out to 2 graphic artists to try and figure out. So I would say it is 5% AI. And so what I had to do is, if you've tried using AI in art, there's one of them is Midjourney, and a lot of artists are using that. But when you use Midjourney, it exports low res, meaning you can't print it. And there are programs that you can put higher resolution, but also you're in a portal with everybody else, meaning anyone can take it. That's part of it. Anyone can take. So prompts are what's key. If you just said a Christmas tree, it's one way. But if you said a Christmas tree with a background of mountains that looks like a Thomas Kincaid show, I mean, you got to give it prompts. And for one picture that I get, it probably takes me 50 pictures. And the one that I was using, Leonardo, you have to pay like tokens. I'm like, what is this, a video game? It's very addicting too. And you give it all these ideas, and like good examples. I don't usually do people, but there's people on the cover of mine. I took most off. There's people with 3 legs. There's people with an arm out of a head, because AI is not perfect. But what AI is really good at, There were some AI programs and they look terrible on Amazon. If you guys buy any adult coloring books, my tip is go on Amazon, make sure they show you pictures. So when you go to my site, you'll scroll down, and even on the back of my book cover, there's pictures so you can see what you're getting. There are people selling coloring books that half the time it's one picture of a dog in a sweater and it's 6 times in here, and it's crappy. It's AI. It looks like you know what, but because this is my reputation, so I'd get ideas from it. Then on myself, I that's why it took so long, Margaret. It was, everyone said, oh, you can do it in a half hour. There's all these YouTube videos where you can put it in AI and you're done. Oh, heck to no.
That's for some that's not quality, I'm sure.
Yeah. And it's not, that's why people are so shocked. And, you know, that just came out, but I'm getting early reviews that people are like, wow, this, first it's 120 pages. Most of them are like 30 or 40.
Right.
Like, this is quality. But if I'm going to do it, I'm all about giving back. So I'm not going to give you crap, you know? So
right.
I had to put it through 3 different programs. I know how to use like Photoshop. So it was, even the background wasn't white. It was muddy and there were lines in it. And then you have to go and clean it up. So like I said, it was much harder. And here's the thing, people hire graphic artists. For the graphic artists I reach out to, guess what they use?
AI.
AI.
Well, you probably use AI to do the rough.
Same. So that's what I did. So, you know, I'm like, okay, so I'm not taking a job away from a graphic artist. A really good friend that I met in entertainment business school, Birgit, she's done some of those beautiful greeting cards, you know, those American greeting cards. She's won awards. So I said, do you want to partner? Do you want to do this? And I sent some of the pictures. She goes, one of those pictures would take me a month.
Wow.
And she's like, it wouldn't be profitable for you or for me to do that. She goes, and she can use, I'm not saying she is, because she doesn't for, you know, when she's doing greeting cards, and hers is all original, but that's where AI, it's like with email. Remember, everyone said, we don't want to use email.
Right.
I'm not going to be taking a script and putting it in and handing it in. And thank God, you know, AI is not a human and we're not allowed to, and none of us want to do that as writers, but we also can't turn a blind eye. You know, I took a list of keywords I had for Amazon advertising for my book, and they all had numbers next to them, and you can't enter them, just a simple thing, into the portal. So I was going to have to, so I just stuck it in AI, this huge list, and said, take the numbers off. And it did, and gave it to me in a second. Right. There's little things it can do. So if we can learn things that are easier, something I did
like
for
an
fun.
Assistant. It's sort of like an assistant, even with writing, because you can just do troubleshooting. You can do brainstorming, and then you can build, you know, work it up. Well,
people don't realize Grammarly's AI. So if you put your stuff in Grammarly, and, you know, it's like half the time, you know, as you write in television, it's not perfect English because nobody speaks perfect English. Right. So if I have bad diction or something like that is part of my character trait, I want it to stay. I don't want to put it through some sanitized Oxford dictionary, you know, thing. But I'll tell you what, I write as fast as I talk, and I like having it to go in of, wow, there's a typo. Yeah. You know, that it doesn't catch. Sometimes it's getting really sassy in the last 2 years. I'm like, I hadn't even thought of it as AI. I just thought it was more editing tool. Of course it's AI. What was I thinking? But it's just now we think of AI as writing scripts and, you know, taking away stuff. But here's the thing that we're going to be battling in the Writers Guild, and I'm glad you brought it up. One of the wins we had, but it's an area we're going to have to keep going. Well, we won so many wins about what AI could be. So one thing we were worried about, the way you get the residuals, is you have an original idea, and you're going to get paid more with an original idea. But all of a sudden, the studios want to take that part away and get you, you know, where you have pre-existing, you're writing like off a book or an idea. The studios go and they ask, you know, AI for 25 Christmas story ideas. They give it to you, and now they try to take it away. It's not your original idea, and you don't get paid as much because AI did some crappy thing that now you have to turn into something, you know? And so now you can't use it as what we call source material. But one of the areas that we're starting out is, and there's lawsuits, so we're going to battle it in court and live to fight another day, is that AI is training on our scripts. So when a studio owns our copyright, like they own the script, they bought it, it is now theirs. I might own the book version of it, but they own the script, right? Yeah. And the studios are feeding it into the AIs to learn, and that's why they're teaching them. So you can literally, as a fun thing, pick who's your favorite author. Like, to give me one of your favorite authors.
Well, I love, nonfiction. I love Jerry Oppenheimer. Love him. He writes biographies. Great. Love him. Okay. So I just want you to do this for fun. And anyone can do this on their own. Pick a favorite author. So I put in, who did I put in? And this was just to see what I was learning with the guild. I really wanted to see training, how much it would matter, blah, blah, blah. So I picked somebody, actually did myself too, but first I think I picked like Aaron Sorkin. And I'm like, writing like Aaron Sorkin, you know, write a screenplay page of this
with da 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 and his style of dialogue and I basically
I've
gave
heard
it all
about
this
that.
stuff.
Yeah.
And it'll come out and it will sound, I'm not saying he's brilliant,
Right.
obviously, but the point is, so I did me. You think, well, how are you giving it to him? If it's on Amazon, it has access. It's read all my books. Usually scripts are out there too. And I say, writing like Karen Schaler, it will give a tone that's very similar. Now you could never cut and paste, but I did it as a back book blurb. I put my back book, this was kind of my whole AI experience. All of my stuff, by the way, is written by me. So to be clear, but I put the blurb, this blurb into AI to see what it did. Sometimes it's funnier than I'll get out. Like there's nothing about elves or Santa in here, but one of them like took a line that was very normal. It's like, and then Santa with his elves came and did. I'm like, what? So I mean, sometimes it's fun. I'll send it to my friends. I'm like, check out this log line. Like I'll say, do a log line about this, and it'll give a decent one. Boring, it's like nothing, but then it'll give crazy ones. But I'll tell you what, it's still creative. And as a creative, it's fun. It's great for titles because there's a million Christmas titles. And so, but here's where it's dumb. And that's why you can't trust it. First of all, it's 2 years old. All the material you're getting from ChatGPT is 2 years old. It's not current. And it's certainly not a source material. You ask, give me 3 quotes by Benjamin Franklin, and it spits it out in a second, but they might not be. They might be off. It might be Benjamin, it might be somebody. I mean, it might be.
Yeah, it's conflating the sources. It's conflating them. Yeah.
You have no idea. So use it as a tool for fun things like I did with ideas for a side hustle, or give me ideas for artwork. And that's what was fun with the coloring book. There's very many beautiful coloring books that are using AI assisted. And, but you got to spend so much time and money giving it all the prompts, to be able to do it.
Okay.
So
now,
the fun
we've been talking for a while. So is there anything else we've been talking for over an hour. So is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, I love talking to you. I love sharing all these
insights. Well, I just want to say you've been very encouraging, even though I never met you offline, but I consider you a friend because I was really going through a rough time just because I was doubting myself, and you really encouraged me. And as a result, I feel like things have gotten so much better because you kept telling me certain things that I didn't even think about. So I think, I think you do. I think what goes around does come around. So, and I think that's what not just friends are for, but I think that when you come from a place, they say that you ask for things that you didn't get, right? So let's say you're someone that's super helpful and you always, I'm doing terrible examples today. I don't look like a very creative writer, but let's say, it's like cooking. So somebody's sick. And so you make a lasagna and you do that and you bring it over to them and you get so much joy. But they say what you do is what you wish someone would do for you. That's subconsciously, true. Right? Yeah. And so I think I love helping people, and I didn't have that help just because I went from being a war correspondent to writing a Christmas movie. No one was in my wheelhouse. There was no classes, no unions. I just had to Google and learn. But what makes you different though, is that I've met people who I call it transactional. I think a lot of people in LA are like this, to tell you the truth. It's like, okay, I'm going to wait, what do you do? And if you can't help them, they're not going to talk to you. And I think that's so transactional. It doesn't really happen to me here because I won't really tolerate it, but I have met those kinds of people here as well, or in the media. But a lot of times, I mean, life is too short to be like that, but you're not like that. You're not transactional. You don't want anything from me. And you seem so normal, because other people I met in the business have really blown me off, basically. So
yeah, well, and a lot of, there's a lot of different reasons for that, I guess.
Well, there's also so many people out there.
Well, yeah. And I feel like, where it comes from me, I feel like you've done me such a favor because, and like I said, I'm not making money. When I said, here's the side hustle. When you say, okay, did you make all your money? No. I'm going to be in the hole for both of these. But usually when I write a book, I can turn it into a movie. And so my long game is someday I'll make money off of it and it'll be a movie. This one's already a movie. So this is seriously an act of love. This was act of love and mental sanity. But when you asked to do this, it's like I said, it's not about me. And I think that's why you asked me, because you're very careful who you have on and you protect your listeners, because I'm going to tell you interesting stories that will hopefully entertain and hopefully educate and uplift and be helpful. And I learn from you and you learn from me. And that's what's so much fun. I will always make time. I remember during the pandemic, they said, how can you I was doing all these Zoom Christmas Karen chats and Christmas camp, virtual camps. People, I'd just be there and they'd ask me questions about writing movies, and you never knew what the theme was going to be, because I have done a lot. So they would ask things. They go, how do you have time? And I said, I could watch TV for a couple hours a night, or I could set a couple hours a night for this. And I'll tell you what, I feel a lot better walking away from an interview with you and sharing with your listeners than I did if I was watching TV or doing something else. I mean, I think it's about connection, and I just love connecting with people. And that's what I get out of it.
Yeah. So you got to get out of the Southwest and see, go back to New York and be in contact with people. Not that I live in New York. I haven't been there in many years.
I miss everyone. I was actually supposed to go Tuesday. I have to, that's what I'm doing after our call. I was supposed to go for a week, my first time back this year. And I was going to see a bunch of people. It was so much fun. And I was so excited. I'm going to hit a Broadway play, but long and short, life happened. And so that's what I have to do after this call. I have to cancel my trip, but I also have to know that it's going to be okay. My turn will come. And right now I'm digging in. I found out I have 5 spec scripts.
Wow.
I had like 3, and a couple were going into production, but then everything happened in 2020. Then everything happened with the writer's strike. I'm in good shape, Margaret. So I just got to find a home. I don't have a manager or an agent. And people say, that's insane. I love having, a team, but I'm very careful. It's exactly what you said. Let's say I had a manager and you reached out to them and said, I'd like to interview Karen Schaler. And they said, yeah, no, Margaret, I'm not sure that's a fit. So obviously, I'm scared of someone representing me, and anyone listening that hears that's a manager, an agent, is also scared when they take on a client, because it's such, our lives are so tied to each other. Agents and managers don't get paid unless we make money, because we give them a percentage. So if they can only have a bandwidth to help so many people. So I am looking for the right partnership. And I feel like it's the dance, like if you were to get married, I don't want to have just an agent or a manager to have one, but in the new year, I'm setting the intention by sharing it out loud. I need the help to go forward, because if I'm going to continue doing this and helping others and trying to find ways to pay it forward, I need other people to help with things like getting my simple things, like not saying it's simple, but helping to get my screenplays to the right people that do that for a living, that are on the phone, that know who's buying what. I can't do everything. I've been trying. And I think that's my weakness. So people say my weakness is I try to do everything myself, and I think at a point you got to get help and you got to ask. And one thing I'm excited about, I can't announce it yet because I have Christmas camps in the works. And I was, hoping to announce a big thing today, but contracts and all that stuff I have to get signed. But when I did my first Christmas camp, it was with a woman at the Phoenicia named Denise Seelman. She's been there been in hospitality more than 25 years. She's put on events, everything from, she does like football when Super Bowl was here, the Fiesta Bowl. She does hotel events. She's worked in cruise lines. So she helped me create this from the hotel side. Now I'm on my own, and I work with like the Denise at the different properties, right? Like I find a new person at that hotel and we put on these Christmas camps together. But I thought about it, and I thought this last one that I was looking at doing, which was 12 days, it was a lot. And I thought, wow, I really need a team. I need just to have, if nothing else, to be like, hey, we got to get this or we got to do that. And so now here's a fate type thing. She's just amazing. And she's so busy, I don't even email her. She just semi-retired to freelance on projects she loves. Wow. And guess what project she loves? Christmas camp. That's cool. So all of a sudden, hopefully I'll get to partner. And so that's the other advice that I give to people, that you see me doing all these things, and I am very isolated, at the moment, just because of life situations and being helping be a caregiver and things like that. But at the end of the day, connecting like this really saves me, because I feel like I'm reaching all of you. And, Margaret, you become like family to me, because you're always been there. You're smart, and I'm watching your journey. Watching other people succeed is my favorite thing. And if I can have 1 second of it, if all the stuff you listen to, there was one thing that sparked something that moves you forward, then I feel like I've done my job. And that's what, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, makes me happy. Yeah, nice. That's it. That's it. And I'm so excited for everything you're doing, because you're killing it.
Things. Well, also, but I was a caregiver for I helped my parents for 15 years, but I was like caregiver for 3 years, like where I was running my dad's life. And then it took me a while to get over the whole thing. And then the pandemic hit, and then I thought, oh my gosh. So I'm sort of trying to make up for lost time. So I can relate to what you're saying. And you're doing amazing, and your listeners are lucky to have you. And I thank you for having me on today. I had so much fun. So guys, if you're looking for early Christmas presents, we got Every Day is Christmas, the book. It'd be fun. You could give the book and like a $5 gift card on Amazon so they could watch the movie. We got a coloring book, and keep an eye out on my website for all the freebies. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So anyway, also, I forgot to give you the link, but you can share this link to this video with people so they know. Oh, good. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna.
Okay, you got to go to work.
Well, no, I've got to get ready. I've got to go to bed early because I have to be at work tomorrow at 4 a.m. So I have to start getting ready early. Yeah, I have to wake up at 3. So I have to start getting ready early.
When are we're gonna do another talk, just chatting, right?